The air conditioning in the executive boardroom of Apex Towers, Port Harcourt, was set to freezing, yet Mr. Benson was sweating like a ram about to be slaughtered. He paced the length of the mahogany table, his Italian leather shoes clicking aggressively against the marble floor. "Who does this mystery buyer think he is?" Benson roared, slamming his fist on the table. "He buys 51% of my company through shell corporations in Dubai and London, and then summons us here like school children? I am the operations director. I run this oil sector." Sitting to his right, Kemi Williams checked her reflection in her phone screen, adjusting her wig. "Relax, Mr. Benson. Whoever he is, he probably just wants a seat on the board. Once he sees our geology reports and the profit margins we've squeezed by cutting those unnecessary safety costs, he will eat from our palms." In the far corner, near the water dispenser, sat Folake. She wasn't at the main table. Despite being the most qualified engineer in the department, she was there merely to take minutes. She clutched her notepad, her eyes tired. She knew the company was rotting from the inside. Benson and Kemi had sold its soul years ago. "Chief Okafor." Benson turned to the elderly CEO who sat quietly at the head of the table. "Why are you so calm? This man is coming to take your chair." Chief Okafor sighed, looking out the window at the sprawling city of Port Harcourt below. "The wind blows where it wishes, Benson. We sold shares to cover your expenditures. Now, the owner has come to collect." Suddenly, the heavy oak double doors swung open. The room went dead silent. 6 security guards in black suits entered first, flanking the doorway. Then, he walked in. The man was tall, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that screamed power. He wore dark aviator sunglasses that hid his eyes completely. The scent of expensive oud wood and crisp currency filled the room. He didn't look at anyone. He simply walked to the empty chair at the opposite end of the table, the owner's seat, and sat down. He placed a single worn-out file folder on the table. It looked old, stained with grease and red dust. Benson scoffed, trying to regain his composure. "Excuse me? You can't just walk in here with your trash and expect us to bow. Who are you?" The stranger didn't speak. He just tapped his finger on the dirty folder. Tap, tap, tap. It was a sound Folake recognized. A rhythm. But from where? The stranger finally spoke, his voice deep and smooth, like a velvet knife. "Mr. Benson. Kemi. It has been 7 years. You don't remember this folder?" He reached up slowly and removed his dark glasses. Benson's eyes bulged. Kemi dropped her phone. The face was sharper, cleaner, and older, but the scar above the left eyebrow was unmistakable. It was the office boy. My story family, welcome back. If you believe that no matter how far you run, your past will always be waiting for you at the door, hit that subscribe button. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's see how far our family reaches today. "Tunde?" Kemi whispered, her voice trembling. The cleaner?" Mr. Benson let out a sharp, nervous laugh. It sounded like a hyena choking on a bone. "Don't be ridiculous, Kemi. This is a joke, right? A look-alike?" He pointed a shaking finger at the man at the head of the table. Tunde was a pauper, a nobody. He barely had shoes without holes. "You expect me to believe he bought Apex Petroleum?" Tunde didn't shout. He didn't even stand up. He simply leaned back in the leather chair, steepling his fingers. The diamond-encrusted watch on his wrist caught the light it cost more than Benson's annual salary. "Sit down, Benson," Tunde said softly. The command had weight. It wasn't the voice of the boy who used to mop the floors. It was the voice of a man who commanded fleets of ships. Benson hesitated, looking at the security guards who were now blocking the doors. He slowly sank back into his chair, his face pale. Tunde looked at the dirty folder on the table. Flashback. 7 years ago. The scene shifted in everyone's mind. The same boardroom, but cleaner then. Tunde, wearing a faded, oversized blue overall, was on his knees, picking up pieces of a broken ceramic vase. "Clumsy idiot!" Benson had shouted, kicking the bucket of soapy water over Tunde's legs. "That vase is worth more than your entire village. Get out of my sight before I call the police." Kemi had laughed, sipping her champagne. "Don't worry, Mr. Benson. Just deduct it from his salary. He can work for free for the next 10 years. Tunde had looked up, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "I didn't break it, sir. You bumped into, Shut up!" Benson had roared. Back to the present. The memory hung in the air, thick and suffocating. You remember, don't you? Tunde asked, his eyes locking onto Kemi. You laughed the loudest, Kemi. You told me that a man with dirt under his fingernails could never touch a woman like you. Kemi swallowed hard, her throat dry. She tried to smile, a desperate, wavering thing. Tunde. Sir, we were young. It was just office banter. You know how stress is. Banter, Tunde repeated, tasting the word like sour wine. He turned his gaze to the far corner. For the first time, his expression softened slightly. He looked at Folake. She hadn't moved. She was staring at him, her mouth slightly open. She wasn't scared like the others. She was heartbroken. She remembered the boy she had tried to protect, the boy who vanished without saying goodbye. Folake, Tunde said, nodding to the empty chair next to him at the head of the table. Why are you sitting in the corner? That is not a place for the vice president. The room gasped. Benson jumped up again. Vice president? She is a junior engineer. She is a nobody. Tunde's eyes snapped back to Benson, cold as ice. And you, Mr. Benson, are currently trespassing in my building. But before I throw you out, we have to talk about the accident on Rig 4, the one you blamed on me. Tunde opened the dirty folder. Inside wasn't paper, it was an old, cracked smartphone. He placed it on the glass table. 7 years ago, Tunde said, his voice low. You sent me to Rig 4 to deliver lunch to the senior staff. You thought I was just a dumb village boy who wouldn't understand what I saw. Flashback. 7 years ago on the Atlantic Ocean. The heat on the offshore rig was a physical weight. The smell of crude oil and salt water filled Tunde's nose as he carried the heavy cooler of food up the metal stairs. He was sweating, his blue uniform clinging to his back. He turned a corner near the loading bay and stopped. Mr. Benson was there. But he wasn't inspecting the drill. He was standing with 3 men who didn't wear Apex uniforms. They were loading brand new drilling valves equipment worth millions of naira onto a small, unmarked speedboat below. Hurry up, Benson hissed, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. If the auditors see this missing, I'm finished. Tunde gasped. He stepped back, his boot clanging against a metal pipe. Clang! Benson spun around. His eyes widened when he saw the office boy. You! Benson snarled. He didn't look scared. He looked murderous. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the floor and marched toward the main pressure valve. With a violent yank, he loosened it. A hiss of gas screamed into the air. The emergency sirens began to wail. WOOP, WOOP, WOOP. Sabotage! Benson screamed, pointing at Tunde. Security! The cleaner is trying to blow us up. 2 large security guards tackled Tunde before he could speak. They slammed his face into the metal grating. He tasted blood and grease. No, sir, I didn't touch it, Tunde cried out, struggling against the heavy boots on his neck. Benson stood over him, smiling cruelly. Who will they believe, Tunde? The director? Or the rat? Back to the present. Tunde touched the scar above his eyebrow. That was the day you broke my life, Benson. You accused me of terrorism to cover your theft. I spent 6 months in a cell waiting for a trial that never happened because you paid the police to lose the file. The boardroom was silent enough to hear a pin drop. Kemi looked at Benson, horror dawning on her face. You sold the valves? Benson was shaking, sweat dripping onto his expensive suit. He's lying. It's his word against mine. There is no proof. Tunde tapped the cracked phone on the table. I didn't just see you, Benson. I was recording a voice note for my mother when I walked up those stairs. The phone recorded everything. He pressed play. The recording was tinny and filled with static, but the voice was unmistakable. Hurry up. If the auditors see this missing, I'm finished. Then, the sound of metal clanging. You, sabotage, security. The audio cut off. The silence in the boardroom was heavier than a tomb. Chief Okafor, the former CEO, slowly stood up. His hands were shaking as he looked at his operations director. Benson, Chief Okafor whispered, his voice cracking with age and betrayal. I defended you. When the board wanted to fire you for the losses in 2018, I put my name on the line for you. And you were stealing from us the whole time? Benson wiped his sweaty face with a trembling hand. He looked around the room, searching for an ally. He found none. Even Kemi had scooted her chair away from him, looking at the ceiling like she had never met him before. It's fake, Benson screamed, his eyes wild. It's AI. You know how technology is these days. He doctored it. You cannot fire me based on a 7-year-old recording from a beggar. Tunde laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. I didn't play this to fire you, Benson. I played it to show them who you are. I don't need a recording to fire you. I own the building. My story, family. Let me ask you a question. Kemi is sitting there pretending she didn't help Benson torment Tunde for years. She is trying to switch sides now that power has changed hands. Do you think Tunde should forgive her? Or does she deserve the same fate as Benson? Hit the like button if you think she's about to get fired too. Benson sneered, buttoning his jacket aggressively. Fine, fire me, but you will regret it. I control the unions. I control the supply chains. If I walk out that door, I take the contacts with me. By tomorrow morning, every rig in the Niger Delta will shut down. You will be a billionaire of a bankrupt company. He turned to storm out, confident in his threat. Sit down, Tunde commanded. Or what? Benson challenged, hand on the doorknob. Or the state CID officers waiting in the lobby will be very interested to see the documents I just sent to their email, Tunde said calmly. Not about the theft 7 years ago, but about the 500 million naira transfer you made to a shell account in Cyprus last Tuesday. Benson froze. The doorknob rattled in his hand. The door opened, but it wasn't Benson walking out. It was 3 officers from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, walking in. Benson collapsed into his chair, the fight draining out of him like oil from a punctured pipeline. There was no screaming, no threats, just the cold, metallic click of handcuffs echoing in the silent boardroom. As they marched him out, he didn't look at Tunde. He stared at the floor, a man whose empire of lies had finally crumbled. When the door clicked shut again, the silence was deafening. Kemi Williams cleared her throat. She stood up slowly, smoothing down her designer skirt. She walked toward the head of the table, a smile plastered on her face, the kind of smile a predator gives before biting. Mr. Adebayo. Tunde, she began, her voice dripping with honey. I must say, I am shocked. Shocked. I had no idea Benson was such a criminal. You have saved this company. She reached for the water pitcher and poured a glass, placing it near Tunde's hand. A servant's gesture. You know, she continued, batting her eyelashes. Back then, I always told the other girls, that Tunde, he has a spark. He is destined for greatness. I was tough on you, yes, but only because I wanted you to toughen up for the world. I was mentoring you, in my own way. Tunde stared at the water glass. Then he looked up at her. Mentoring me? Tunde asked calmly. Yes, exactly. Kemi nodded vigorously. I saw your potential. Tunde stood up. He walked over to the window, looking out at the Port Harcourt skyline. Do you remember the Christmas gala in Abuja, Kemi? 6 months before I was fired? Kemi's smile faltered. The gala? I was serving drinks. I accidentally bumped into your table. Just one drop of red wine landed on your shoe. Tunde turned back to face her. You made me kneel, in front of the Minister of Petroleum, in front of everyone. You made me use my own shirt to wipe your shoe. And while I was down there, you poured the rest of your glass on my head and said, now you look like the trash you are. Kemi took a step back, her back hitting the wall. I was drunk. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Tunde said, his voice hard. It was who you are. You kick people when they are down to make yourself feel tall. My story, family. We all know a Kemi. They ignore you when you are walking, but want to ride with you when you are driving. If you were Tunde, would you fire her immediately, or keep her employed just to make her suffer? Tell me in the comments. Tunde returned to his seat. Get out of my sight, Kemi. Go to your office and wait for HR. If you try to steal so much as a stapler, you will join Benson in the cell. Kemi fled the room, her heels clicking frantically, tears of humiliation stinging her eyes. Now, the room was empty, except for Chief Okafor, who was slumped in defeat, and Folake. Tunde looked at the woman in the corner. She hadn't said a word. She was gripping her notepad so tightly her knuckles were white. Chief, leave us, Tunde said respectfully. We will discuss your retirement package tomorrow. The old man nodded wearily and left. Finally, they were alone. The billionaire and the engineer, the ghost and the girl he left behind. Hello, Folake, Tunde whispered. Folake stood up, her eyes blazing with a sudden, unexpected anger. Don't you dare. Hello, me Tunde Adebayo. You have been alive for 7 years, and you never called? The silence that followed Folake's outburst was heavier than the humid air of the delta. Tunde took a step toward her, his hand reaching out but stopping midair. Folake, please, you don't understand. I was a wanted man. Benson pinned the sabotage on me. If I had called you, if I had sent even one text, he would have traced it. He would have destroyed you to get to me. He destroyed me anyway, Folake shouted, tears finally spilling over. Do you know what it was like here after you left? Benson made sure everyone knew I was the rat's friend. For 7 years, I have been passed over for promotion. I train junior engineers, who become my bosses within 6 months. I am the oldest junior staff in this building. She grabbed her handbag, a cheap, peeling leather bag that clashed with the opulence of the boardroom. I thought you were dead. Tunde, I mourned you, and while I was crying, you were somewhere in Europe buying tailored suits. Tunde looked pained. The mask of the billionaire slipped, revealing the boy who used to share roasted plantain with her during lunch breaks. I wasn't buying suits, Folake. I was surviving. I washed plates in London. I slept in train stations. It took me 4 years to get my first break in tech, and 3 more to build enough power to come back here and fight Benson. He walked to the table and picked up a gold pen. But I am back now, and I can fix it. I know you are struggling. I know about the loans. Folake froze. Her eyes narrowed. You investigated me? I investigated everyone, Tunde admitted quietly. Then you know, she whispered. I know you have a daughter, Tunde said softly. Bisi. She is 6 years old. Folake stepped back as if slapped. Don't you dare speak her name. You don't get to come in here like a savior and talk about my child. My story, family. This is the hardest part. Tunde thought money could fix the past, but he forgot that trust is like a mirror. Once it is broken, you can fix it, but you will always see the cracks. If you were Folake, would you trust him again? Or is 7 years too long to forgive? Tell me in the comments. Tunde reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. I'm not trying to buy you, Folake, but I know the school fees are due. I know the landlord is threatening you. Let me help. Folake looked at the checkbook, then at his face. Her expression hardened. Keep your money, Mr. Adebayo, she said, her voice shaking with dignity. I survived Benson without you. I survived hunger without you. I will survive this too. She turned to the door. Folake. Wait, Tunde called out. Where is her father? Folake stopped. She didn't turn around. He died before she was born, she said flatly. Tunde watched her walk out. He sank into the leather chair, feeling smaller than he ever did when he was cleaning floors. He had conquered the company, but he had lost the only person who mattered. Suddenly his phone buzzed. It was a text from his private investigator, an image attached. Tunde zoomed in on the photo of Folake's daughter, Bisi. He stared at the girl's eyes. He stared at the birthmark on her chin. His heart stopped. He had that same birthmark. Tunde stared at the phone screen until the pixels seemed to burn into his retinas. The timeline, the math, the birthmark. He left 7 years ago. Bisi is 6. He ran. He sprinted out of the boardroom, ignoring the shocked gasps of the junior staff in the hallway. He bypassed the elevators and took the stairs, his designer shoes pounding against the concrete like a heartbeat. He burst out into the humid heat of the staff parking lot. The sun was scorching, baking the asphalt. In the distance, near the exit gate, he saw her. Folake was standing next to a battered second-hand Toyota Corolla. The hood was up, and steam was hissing from the engine. She was wiping sweat from her forehead, looking at the smoke with defeat. Folake! Tunde shouted, running toward her. She looked up, startled. What do you want now? To buy me a new car so you can feel like a hero? Tunde stopped a few feet away, breathless. He didn't look at the car. He looked at her, really looked at her. He searched her face for the truth she had buried. You said her father died, Tunde said, his voice trembling. You told me he died before she was born. Folake froze. She slowly lowered the hood of the car. The metal slammed shut with a finality that echoed in the heavy air. He did, she said coldly. The Tunde I knew, the sweet, humble boy who dreamed of a better life. He died on that oil rig 7 years ago. The man who woke up in Europe and never looked back? He is a stranger. I didn't know. Tunde stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. Folake, I swear on my mother's grave, I didn't know. If I knew you were pregnant, what would you have done? Folake cut him off, her voice rising. You were running from the police. You had nothing. Would you have taken us into hiding with you? Would you have raised a baby in a refugee camp? She laughed, a bitter, painful sound. No, Tunde. I saved her. I stayed here. I took the insults. I took the shame of being an unwed mother in a judgment society, just so she could have a home. I protected her from your mess. My story, family, my chest is heavy. Folake carried the weight of the world on her back for 6 years to protect her child. Was she right to keep it a secret? Or does every father have a right to know? No matter the situation. Tell me what you would have done in the comments. Tunde felt his knees go weak. He leaned against her dusty car for support. I want to see her. No, Folake said instantly. She is my blood, Folake. You cannot deny me that. I can, she hissed. You are a billionaire now. You have enemies. You just humiliated Benson and Kemi. You think they won't strike back? If they find out BC is your daughter, she becomes a target. As if on cue, a black SUV with tinted windows rolled slowly past them. The window cracked open just an inch. Tunde, with his instincts sharpened by years of survival, saw the flash of a camera lens. He lunged in front of Folake to shield her, but the car sped off, screeching out of the gate. They already know, Tunde whispered, watching the dust settle. Benson isn't done. Get in the car, Tunde ordered, pointing to his armored G-Wagon that had pulled up to the curb. I am not going anywhere with you, Folake shouted, backing away. Folake, look at me. Tunde grabbed her shoulders. His grip was firm but shaking. That SUV wasn't just watching, they were scouting. Benson knows he is finished unless he finds leverage. You and BC are the leverage. Folake's defiance crumbled into pure terror. She's at school, Bright Future Academy. Get in, Tunde commanded. They jumped into the back seat. The interior was like a spaceship cream leather, screens and silence. The door thudded shut with the heavy sound of bulletproof plating. Bright Future Academy. Drive like you stole it, Tunde told his driver, a massive ex-military man named Musa. The engine roared. The SUV tore onto the main road, weaving through the chaotic Port Harcourt traffic. Motorcycles honked, and street hawkers scattered, cursing the rich man in the big car. But inside, the air was cold and tense. Tunde pulled out his phone. Musa, call the protection team. Send Unit 2 to the school. Now. Folake watched him, her hands trembling in her lap. Who have you become, Tunde? You have private armies? I told you, Tunde said, watching the road with hawk eyes. I didn't just make money. I made enemies. In the energy sector, people don't just sue you. They make you disappear. My story, family. My heart is beating fast. They are trying to get to the innocent child. Benson is desperate, and a desperate man is a dangerous man. If you want to see Tunde save his daughter and rain fire on his enemies, make sure you are subscribed. You don't want to miss what is coming next. The car screeched around a corner, arriving at the school gate just as the bell rang for closing time. Children in green and white uniforms poured out into the dusty compound. There, Folake screamed, pointing. By the gate. Tunde looked. His blood ran cold. A man in a rough, faded shirt was standing by the gate, talking to a little girl with braids. The girl looked exactly like Tunde. The man was holding a doll out to her, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He grabbed her small hand. It wasn't a teacher. It was one of the thugs Tunde remembered seeing with Benson on the rig 7 years ago. Musa, block the gate! Tunde roared. The G-Wagon jumped the curb, smashing through a wooden fruit stand and screeching to a halt inches from the thug. Tunde didn't wait for the car to stop completely. He kicked the door open and sprinted. Tunde didn't think. He didn't calculate. He became a missile. He collided with the thug, tackling him into the red dust of the school compound. The impact was sickening, a crunch of bone and surprise. The thug released BC's hand, and she stumbled back, screaming in terror. Mummy! BC shrieked. Folake was already there. She scooped the child up, pressing BC's face into her chest to hide the violence, running toward the safety of the school veranda. On the ground, the thug scrambled to get up, pulling a jagged, rusted knife from his waistband. You want to die, office boy? He spat, recognizing Tunde from the old days. Tunde didn't flinch. He blocked the knife swing with his forearm, the expensive fabric of his suit ripping, a line of blood appearing, and drove a solid punch into the man's throat. The thug gagged, dropping the knife, clutching his neck. By then, Musa, the driver, was there. He didn't punch. He simply placed a heavy boot on the thug's chest and pressed down, pinning him to the earth like an insect. The school compound was in chaos. Teachers were shouting, parents were running, and a crowd was gathering at the gate, shouting, "Ole, kidnapper! Burn him!" Tunde stood up, ignoring the blood dripping from his arm. He walked over to the thug, his breathing heavy, his eyes dark. "Who sent you?" Tunde demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The thug wheezed, smiling through bloody teeth. You think you won? Benson. Benson has friends. The police, the area commander, they are all on his payroll. You can't fight the system, Tunde." Sirens wailed in the distance. Not the ambulance, the police. "Musa, get him in the trunk," Tunde ordered calmly. "We are not waiting for the police. If the police take him, he will disappear before he can confess. We are taking him to the safe house." "Tunde!" Folake cried out from the veranda, holding a trembling Bisi. She looked at the blood on his arm, then at the unconscious man being dragged away. "What have you done? You just kidnapped a man in broad daylight. You are acting just like them." My story, family, Tunde just crossed a line. He broke the law to save his child. But now he is no longer just a businessman. He is a vigilante. Was he right to take the law into his own hands, knowing the police are corrupt? Or has he become the monster he was fighting? Tell me in the comments. Tunde walked over to them. He looked at Bisi. The little girl peeked out from her mother's shoulder, her big brown eyes wide with fear. She looked at Tunde, the stranger with the bleeding arm. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. The words "sir" broke Tunde's heart more than the knife could have. "We have to go," Tunde said to Folake. "It's not safe here. They will come back with guns next time." The safe house was a fortress disguised as a mansion in the quiet GRA district of Port Harcourt. High walls, electric fences, and armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Inside the living room, the silence was thick. Bisi was asleep on a plush sofa, exhausted by the trauma. Folake sat beside her, stroking the girl's hair, her eyes red from crying. Tunde sat on the coffee table opposite them, his shirt off. A private doctor was stitching the knife wound on his arm. Every time the needle pierced his skin, Tunde didn't flinch, but Folake did. "Does it hurt?" Folake asked quietly, breaking the silence. "Not as much as watching you look at me like I'm a stranger," Tunde replied, his voice rough. The doctor finished, taped the bandage, and left the room. "You are a stranger, Tunde," Folake said, her voice trembling. "The Tunde I knew wouldn't have a private dungeon in his basement. He wouldn't have men like Musa who know how to break bones. You have become a warlord." Tunde stood up, pacing the room. "I became what I needed to be to survive. You think the oil business is a tea party? It is war." "Folake, Benson stole 7 years of my life. He tried to steal our daughter today. Do you want me to call the police? The same police who took Benson's bribe to loose my file?" Before Folake could answer, the heavy mahogany door opened. Musa walked in. He looked grim. He was wiping his hands on a rag. "Boss," Musa said, his voice deep like a generator engine. The boy talked. He sang like a bird. Tunde stiffened. "Where is Benson?" "He is not at his house. He is at the Old Wharf. He has a meeting with the Chinese investors at midnight," Musa reported. "He isn't just fleeing, boss. He downloaded the entire geological database of Apex Petroleum onto a hard drive. He is selling the company's future for 2 billion naira cash before he jumps on a boat to Cameroon." Tunde's face went hard as stone. "If he sells that data, Apex is worthless. The thousands of jobs I promised to save, the community projects, everything will be gone. We have to move now," Musa urged. "The area commander has issued an arrest warrant." "For Benson?" Folake asked hopefully. Musa shook his head. "No, madam. For Tunde. For kidnapping the thug at the school." My story, family. This is how the system fights back. The victim becomes the criminal. Tunde is wounded, the police are hunting him, and his enemy is about to escape with everything. It looks like game over. If you were Tunde, would you run away to save yourself? Or go to the wharf and risk everything to stop Benson? Hit the like button if you think he should fight. Tunde grabbed a fresh black shirt and pulled it over his bandages. He grabbed his car keys. "I'm going," Tunde said. "You can't." Folake stood up, blocking his path. "The police are looking for you. It's a trap. If you go to that wharf, you will die." Tunde looked down at her. He reached out and gently touched her cheek. She didn't pull away this time. If I don't go, Benson wins. He wins the money, he wins the power, and he proves that a cleaner can never be a king. Tunde's eyes burned with intensity. I have to finish this. Take care of our daughter. He walked out into the rainy night. The Old Wharf was a graveyard of rusted ships and abandoned shipping containers. The rain was coming down in sheets now, turning the dirt ground into black mud. The smell of diesel, dead fish, and rot hung heavy in the air. Tunde left the G-Wagon hidden behind a pile of tires. He moved through the shadows, ignoring the throbbing pain in his stitched arm. He could see the lights ahead, floodlights cutting through the rain, illuminating a small warehouse at the edge of the water. Inside, he saw them. Mr. Benson was standing by a metal table, holding a silver hard drive. Across from him were two men in suits, the buyers. They were inspecting a laptop screen, nodding. It's all there, Benson was shouting over the sound of the rain. Seismic data for the new Oloibiri field. Worth billions. I want my money wired now. Tunde checked his pistol, a precaution Musa insisted on. He took a deep breath. He didn't have time to wait for backup. If that wire transfer went through, Benson would disappear, and Apex Petroleum would be empty. Tunde kicked the corrugated metal door open. Bang! The deal is off! Tunde's voice thundered, echoing in the warehouse. Benson jumped, clutching the hard drive to his chest. The buyers looked up, startled. Tunde? Benson laughed. A sound of pure disbelief. He didn't look scared. He looked amused. You actually came? You foolish boy. You think this is a movie? Benson snapped his fingers. From the shadows of the shipping containers, 4 uniformed police officers stepped out. But they weren't there to arrest Benson. They had their AK-47 seconds pointed directly at Tunde's chest. The area commander, ACP Danladi, stepped forward, chewing on a toothpick. Mr. Adebayo, the corrupt officer, grinned. We have been looking for you. Kidnapping is a serious offense. Tunde froze. He was surrounded. He slowly raised his hands. Danladi, Tunde said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding his veins. How much is he paying you? Whatever it is, I can double it. It's not about money anymore, Benson sneered, walking closer to Tunde. He stopped just out of arm's reach. It's about respect. You humiliated me in my own boardroom. You thought you could just buy your way into my world and kick me out? I built this industry while you were scrubbing toilets. Benson turned to the buyers. Transfer the funds, then we leave. He looked back at Tunde, his eyes dead and cold. ACP, when we are on the boat, finish him. Make it look like a gang robbery gone wrong. Another tragic death in Port Harcourt. Tunde was forced to his knees in the mud. The cold barrel of an AK-47 pressed against the back of his head. My story, family. I am shaking. The bad guy is winning. The corrupt police are about to execute our hero, and the thief is about to get away with billions. Is this how the story ends? Does evil win because they play dirty? If you believe Tunde has one last trick up his sleeve, type miracle in the comments right now. Benson watched his phone. Transfer complete, he smiled. He pocketed the hard drive and turned to the waiting speedboat. Goodbye, office boy. The ACP clicked the safety off his rifle. Click. Any last words? The officer asked. Tunde looked up. He wasn't looking at the gun. He was looking past the warehouse, toward the dark ocean. He smiled. Yes, Tunde said softly. Look at the water. Benson turned to look at the dark water, confused. What? Suddenly, the night exploded. Boom! 3 massive floodlights cut through the rain, blinding everyone on the dock. The roar of heavy diesel engines drowned out the thunder. 3 Nigerian Navy patrol boats emerged from the darkness, surrounding the small wharf like sharks circling prey. A voice boomed over a military-grade megaphone, shaking the very ground. This is the Nigerian Navy. Drop your weapons or we will open fire. ACP Danladi turned pale. His toothpick fell out of his mouth. He looked at the Navy gunboats, then at his rusty AK-47. He knew the hierarchy of power. The police might own the streets, but the Navy owned the oil. Clatter. Danladi dropped his rifle into the mud. Don't shoot. We surrender. On the deck of the lead boat stood a figure in a raincoat. It wasn't a soldier. It was Chief Okafor, the former CEO. He held a radio, his face grim. Benson, you thought because I was old I was toothless? I still know the Chief of Naval Staff. Benson screamed in frustration. He shoved the foreign buyers aside and sprinted toward his speedboat, clutching the hard drive like a lifeline. "I won't go to jail, I won't." "He's getting away," Tunde yelled. Tunde scrambled up from the mud, ignoring the searing pain in his stitched arm. He didn't wait for the Navy to dock. As Benson jumped into the speedboat and frantically yanked the starter cord, Tunde leaped off the pier. He landed in the boat with a heavy thud, crashing into Benson. The two men tumbled across the wet fiberglass floor. Benson swung the heavy hard drive, smashing it into Tunde's ribs. Tunde groaned but didn't let go. He grabbed Benson by his expensive Italian lapels and slammed him against the steering console. "It's over, Benson," Tunde roared, his face inches from the man who had tormented him for years. "I made you," Benson spat, blood on his teeth. "I gave you a job when you were nothing. You made me a victim," Tunde growled, rearing back his fist. "But God made me a survivor." He delivered a single, thunderous punch to Benson's jaw. Benson crumpled like a wet sack of rice. The hard drive slid across the floor, stopping near the edge of the water. Tunde panted, standing over his unconscious enemy. The rain washed the mud from his face. The Navy SEALs were boarding the dock, handcuffing the corrupt police officers and the foreign buyers. Chief Okafor stepped onto the boat, flanked by 2 armed soldiers. He looked at Tunde, then at the unconscious Benson. "You called me just in time, Tunde," the old chief said, nodding. "The tracker you put on the hard drive led us straight here." Tunde picked up the hard drive, the future of the company, the jobs of thousands of people. He held it up to the rain. "My story, family, look at God. The trap the enemy set has become their own grave. Benson wanted to sell the company's future, but now he has sold his own freedom. Hit that like button if you believe that evil can run for 100 years. But truth will catch it in one day." Tunde looked at the chief. "It's not finished yet. I have one more stop to make." "Where?" Chief asked. "Home," Tunde said, "to fix what is broken." 2 weeks later, the atmosphere at Apex Towers had changed completely. The fear was gone, replaced by the buzzing energy of a fresh start. Tunde stood at the head of the boardroom table. But this time, the room wasn't filled with arrogant executives. It was filled with rig workers, junior engineers, and administrative staff. For too long, Tunde addressed them, his voice echoing with authority and warmth. This company was a place where the strong ate the weak. That ends today. He pointed to the screen behind him. "We are launching the new Apex initiative. Profits will no longer go to shell accounts in Dubai. They will go to better equipment, safety gear, and a scholarship fund for the children of our staff." The room erupted in applause. Then, the door opened. Kemi walked in. But she wasn't wearing her designer heels or her expensive wig. She was wearing an orange boiler suit and heavy safety boots. She looked humbled, stripped of her vanity. She walked up to Tunde, holding her deployment letter. "Sir," she said quietly, unable to meet his eyes. "Rig 4? That is the offshore platform. It is hard labor. It is where the real work happens, Kemi," Tunde said, not unkindly. "You said you saw potential in me when I was cleaning floors. Now I see potential in you. Go to the rig. Learn what it smells like. Learn the names of the men who work in the sun. If you survive 6 months without complaining, we will talk about a desk job." Kemi nodded, tears in her eyes not of anger, but of understanding. She turned and walked out, starting her long journey to redemption. Tunde turned to the woman standing to his right. She looked radiant in a blue blazer, holding herself with the dignity of a queen. "And finally," Tunde announced, "I am stepping down as CEO. I have other companies to run globally. I need someone who knows this business better than anyone, someone who has integrity when no one is watching." He turned to her. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your new CEO, Engineer Folake." The applause was deafening. Folake looked at Tunde, shock and gratitude warring in her eyes. "You earned this," he whispered to her. "Not because of me, despite me." Later that evening, Tunde pulled his car up to a small, modest house in the suburbs. He didn't bring his security team. He didn't bring the G-Wagon. He drove a simple sedan. He walked to the gate and knocked. Folake opened it. She was wearing casual house clothes, looking more beautiful to him than any model in Europe. "CEO?" she teased gently, leaning against the doorframe. "It suits you." Tunde smiled. He looked past her. "Is she?" "She is in the parlor," Folake said. Stepping aside, she asked where the Superman went. Tunde walked inside. BC was sitting on the rug, coloring. She looked up, her eyes lighting up with recognition. Tunde knelt down. He didn't offer her money or gifts. He simply offered his hand. "Hello, BC," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am Tunde. I used to be a friend of your mummy. Can I sit with you?" BC looked at her mother. Folake nodded slowly, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through the years of pain. BC smiled, revealing a gap-toothed grin. "Okay, but you have to color inside the lines." Tunde laughed, a sound of pure joy that he hadn't felt in 7 years. "I promise. I am very good at following instructions." He picked up a crayon. The billionaire was gone. The office boy was gone. Finally, the father had arrived. And that, my story family, is how the stone that the builders rejected became the chief cornerstone. Tunde learned that true power isn't about how much money you have in the bank, but how many lives you can lift up on your way to the top. Thank you for journeying with me through the pain, the betrayal, and the victory. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and turn on notifications.